exactly where we are sitting here, right here at Oyoun, through a lot of people who used to talk about her with her through people I met here. And then her words were, of course, like so timeless and powerful messages that are also relevant living right around us. Rongin Sagar in Bengali, it means colorful ocean. And this is a project that we want to kind of messages through her poems that are so important for people that are living here and also living across globally. And it felt that we want to kind of start knowing her again through the people who knew her personally and also people who knew of her. And that's how I came to know also. Started reaching out to people like Katharina Aguntoy and a lot of really info. And that's how we kind of visioned this Rongin Sagar to grow over a period of time where different artists from different spaces could respond to her in their own artistic interpretations. And then I reached out to Anya, who has been also a beautiful influence with her beautiful words. And she's been an artist. I'm fortunate to curate this journey together of Rongin Sagar, and which, yes, thank you so much for being part of it. And I'm looking forward to the journey with everybody who's going to be part of it for as long as it's possible.
Thank you so much. Hello, hello. So beautiful to see all of you here. It's quite packed. I did not expect your presence is felt. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I'm Anya Salah, and I was very honored. Told me it's starting with a poem by my Ayim. I was like, oh, nice, okay. But isn't my Ayim so known already? Do we really need another project to make her work known to the world or to people, especially in Germany? And shortly after, I realized, yes, we do. I'm a poet, artist and writer, and in my journey of poetry writing, I've realized that deconstructing language in English is what I mainly want to do. But who has done that in German, actually? Who has done that from audiovisual performance in any way there is? And shortly after, of course, we started thinking, okay, how can we start Rongin Sagar? How can we somehow execute this vision that Madhumita had for Rongin Sagar, and how do we pay tribute to my Ayim? I'm lucky enough to have a wonderful photographer, artist, writer as a friend, Akinbode Akinbiyi. Yes. Who I knew was living at the time and fortunate enough to be alive at the time in which my Ayim was alive as well. Those of you who had the chance to see the exhibition above, the person sitting next to me is Muhammad Salah Abdulaziz, artist, photographer, and also a very good friend.
Hello, everyone. I was saying, and Madhu as well, so many of you have come. It's really very, very welcoming, very, very good. This evening is going to be a sort of free, open, no years, and then unfortunately she had a kind of breakdown, and then eventually passed on. A very, very sad moment. But the community then came together. there was a very, very strong memorial for her, and then later on the funeral. So, okay, now let's start with our conversation, Mohammed.
Body, please tell us about the photographs and about also your personal relationship to my Ayim and to the overall context of Britain at that time.
So probably some of you already know I'm a passionate photographer. My way of working, I don't normally work in a studio. I'm not a stroller. That's the what's the word? The translation into photographs. I was thinking today also to observe, but beyond observation is wandering. Some people talk of itinerant photography. This is actually more. So anyway, yeah. So I wander. So then about I moved actually to Berlin. So I was photographing seriously, every day going out, especially around Potsdamer Platz. So one of the images in the show upstairs, high rises around it. So one of these, but also two images of Berlin then, which gives you a kind of context to this.
It's filled for I find it quite exciting always to get on these topics because I'm really process of looking at a photograph as a process of listening before actually seeing. So I'm really interested in the correlation between poetry and
I always claim that before you see, you listen. So the ears are actually one of the most sensitive organs on our body, on our physical cloak. And with sound, people often not so aware, but still, like now, just the wind has been moving a bit. Quite demanding around. So these are all the kind of things that I'm constantly engaging with, trying to, so to understand as I move through spaces, as I negotiate the day. Mohammed just spoke now of the everyday and the everyday, but I mean, we're also very different. So some people, they don't want to think about certain things, or they're not very interested in other matters, so they don't really take in. But for me, there already, what was happening in Auschwitz, they didn't want to believe it. And it was very interesting. More as we go on to other, it's so if you've been very active as a creative person here on Earth, it's very true. Your observations, so very, very interesting. Something back. So this is a kind of again, this, especially with names, it's the same, similar. The other day, I was here in Berlin photographing. This is in my neighborhood of then, but also now as well. So this is something, again, which I say it's very much an individual thing, very subjective, but at the same time, trying to reach out.
And photographs. So I'll open the images and just look at them.
Time is fixed. We move through as best you can, and then you realize over time. So then, looking back like 30 years ago, I can remember some moments with my Ayim for you to be very so grounded in your own zone, so to speak, your time zone, and but being aware of always moving, hopefully forward, and doing your thing, creative in any way you like as possible. And I always say, actually, all of us are actually creative beings, in any kind of way, even right down to simple things like aggressive family or conservative family, all kinds of stuff. It's all crazy at times. But I'm very much for being very open, and what I call a golden oldie, your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, you're still willing to learn. And then also to learn from the children as well, too. So I was telling my daughter the other day.
So, and then I realized that it's always about...
In fact, during when they started with the pandemic and social distancing and wearing masks, those times it was cloth masks, and I would never have done that. I would still go out. I have a friend of mine who was in Nigeria doing his own private space, your apartment or your house or whatever it is. Be aware of how you're moving, and your body movements. So in my wandering, I try to be as conscious as possible. And it's interesting. You use your eyes to see, at least I do. So I'm trying to observe my things. But it's not what you really see. Eating a certain Kräuter herb or certain ingredients they put in the food upset me. So I cool down. So I don't actually go out eating a lot. That's one of the reasons. I prefer to cook myself, things like that. And the company you keep. Yeah, and also the spaces you're moving through. Sensational images. I'm not going to go to the I don't post the images. And in the old days, you could try and sell your images to the newspapers. I don't, or be a missionary or anything, but is to be what you call it, verdauung. What do you call verdauung in English? Your digestion. Everything, the taste, the skin. We were talking about that yesterday. All these things, I think, are very, very important. Maybe I can just say something, because in moving through spaces, for example, I've been living in Europe now for 50 years. I'm in Germany. So now I'm a black person, so I have a dark, black skin, I'm a brown skin. I'm moving through white spaces. I'm very much aware of this. But so many times my surroundings are not aware of this. So much so that I can take images, sometimes intimate images. They don't even know I'm around. But I'm a black person. But now, very interestingly, in Nigeria, the total opposite. People are very aware of you, as a photographer especially, and they often come up to you, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But here, very, very, very rarely. So again, this is what I mean about being very conscious, aware, and we spoke about this yesterday again. You actually, you form your own path through this spaces, through this, what I call the urban space, but also the rural space. And you forge your way through. Sometimes things come your way, and then you have to decide, now, do I engage with this particular moment, this particular person, this particular incident, or do I move on? Something I spoke of years ago is like a dance. So I'm actually dancing with my environment constantly. Over the years, I've been attacked at times, sometimes by the police. I was talking with some friends of Marika about this, or by other individuals. Once it was in Brazil. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like this? And again, it's a kind of, animals do this sometimes. It's almost as if you're invading the terror
act. In essence, it's like it took me a really hard time to kind of like Baldwin referred to as that he did not know if I was making landmarks for myself or writing or poetry as a form of self
to see, but actually it's more from the heart or from the solar plexus. That's where you can really begin to see and sense, and from your ears as well, hear. And then also spirits out there, very destructive, so you have to sort of negotiate those kind of dangerous spaces. But yeah, knowing where you stand and understanding. That's why it's an everyday thing. You have to know what is actually within you. What's my standpoint? What am I looking at? What am I trying to make? I deliberately do not say shoot. I don't like that word shoot, especially now with so much gun violence. But it is true. The camera is actually it came out very much from the gun. Huh? You know, the focusing and the sights, the viewfinder, press the shutter. You know, you make, capture. You've shot the image, and then you have things like snapshot, all kinds of stuff. I still do interrogate these terms, and I'm also I try to be as aware as possible of what it is I am trying to make, and certain things like what do you call it, or something very exceptional. Yesterday, somebody lying on the ground. This was in Friedrichshain, sleeping, but obviously homeless. So now I'm asking myself, what am I going to do with this image? Why am I doing this kind of images, and so on and so forth? I've been working on this for years, actually for decades, and it gets so intense at times that sometimes you feel the next thing, I could be the homeless person. At the same time, it's a narrative. I'm trying to not understand homelessness. I think I have some kind of understanding of it, but I'm trying to say something about it. Then what? And again, like you were saying, the colonial gaze, looking down. So sometimes you can put, but it's going on, things like that. So this is something I really am very interested in, and I do make photographs, questioning what is a photograph. Perhaps some of you saw my exhibition in the Martin Gropiusbau 2 years ago. And one particular section was very much about this, about photography and some other things.
Visual, that is by that thing to be. So this is my last remark. So would you like to add anything? And we open it for Q&A.
Blind people actually see more than non-blind people, or people who have way of coming on earth. And a doctor learned the language yet. So during the workshop, there was one young girl, she was 5 or 6, and she was just sitting there, but she couldn't hear what we were doing. The musicians from the Philharmonie could get the sound from the floor, they were very much into the with this very, for me, disadvantaged children. But then the leader of the workshop, the British man, a very nice guy, he said, "Buddy, don't worry. First of all, just treat them like normal people." This is a fact. In fact, because we spent about 5 days there all together, and the children amongst themselves, they really tease each other, and they make jokes about their disabilities. Well, I was even laughing with them. Very beautiful moment. So they actually, as I said again, we're all in one big family, and what we call disabilities, or like you were saying now, if you're blind, to explain to somebody who can't see an image,
Yeah, I agree, and I have to make an intervention here because this whole questioning is not coming from a sense of ability. That's it. While where I come from, the art space in itself, it's both the open up the space now for Q&A. Please, if you would like to. Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks for this exchange, mainly perceptional rather than heady. But the question still remains, when you, with a camera, you are a voyeur.
I take my camera out literally every day and make images. And the idea is actually a narrative. Like I was saying about homeless. I was telling my daughter again the other day, No, it wasn't my daughter. I don't know. I know. I was telling somebody. Many years ago, we were in Munich and the English-Garten in summer, and then we were going past maybe some kind of beer cells where they drink beer, and we saw a young girl outside the cells, obviously somehow distraught, emotionally distraught. Maybe her boyfriend had just left her or something. So I wanted to go. My daughter said, "No, you can't do that," and so I didn't. But I often thought about that incident. This was about 30, 40 years ago. I say, wow. So, yeah, it's... The other day, I took a photograph of a young lady on her mobile phone in Chicago. She didn't know I was making the photograph. Story. But in my case, not writing, or using the keyboard, but with images. Does the answer suffice?
Connection, empathy, sense of communication with the object or subject in front of you. But to me, that's beyond catching, and so that's beyond voyeurism. I put that word in because it was almost like a provocation to say, here is an observer and here's an object being observed or a subject being observed or intruded. And I think those margins and those distances or closenesses are really what art can be about in photography, in writing, or in just engaging in talking with each other.
Just one second. Thank you. I would agree with you. There's a song. So I don't photograph conflicts or shootings or stabbings or whatever it is. I would rather try and stop it. But there are photographers who, then the camera comes out. It's
to also react to your question by saying that, yeah, I think like my generation, we came and we found it kind of like set up, and we're very privileged because Akinbode Akinbiyi and his colleagues kind of paved the way for African photographers, our generation, to find some resources that we can go back to. But I think my conduct was kind of like chasing this, whatever you call it, beauty, for example. It was like a mirage that I'm trying to reach, and once I reached there, it was nothing, and it became the next, it became like photographing the other, and I went to the other. It was not the other, it was me. So I feel like it's actually a process, a continuous process of learning about oneself as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So I have a question. One is, you were speaking about, what was it again? Being in the present and being conscious, and that you don't believe like death is necessarily the end of things, right? And you mentioned something about names. So I was wondering, what does your name mean?
my name or our names?
Your name.
People, huh? So Akin means actually the other names, but they were not like the name they bore. There was more like praise names or names which describe what they're doing or something. So Akinbiyi, I believe, that was now our family name, Akinbiyi, but was actually the name of one of my ancestors. And then Akinbode means, so Akin, as we come back again. That's, about it. But what's interesting with names is that, again, that's very interesting because there's some deeper meanings for the word. Like, came to Kampala in the the late 19th century, early 20th century, and built a fort in Kampala. So now I call the work on Kampala Lugard's Avenue. But guard means like protect. What do you call it? Secure, makes a place secure. And Louis is some old Anglo-Saxon, I'm not saying it properly, but like now pronounced Lugard. Lu means tribe, ethnic people. So you see, the man himself was actually living, his name. I found it very interesting because, by the way, there's a Lugard Avenue in Lagos still, because he was one of the, I think he was one of the first governors of then the amalgamated Nigeria. But of Lagos, actually.
Yeah, so the other day I was listening to someone called Onyeka Nubia. He's also from Nigeria but lives in Britain. He's a jurist and philosopher, and he was talking about names and naming. And it was the story about him. He was given a name. He was not given a name that he was supposed to have because his mom didn't give him the name because he was not an Igbo, he was a Yoruba, and the name was an Igbo name. And after many years, until he started writing and publishing his own books, then he got the name Onyeka, which is an Igbo name that he was supposed to have. And he said that names are words, and words are vibrations, and so names are not.
Fulfilling prophecy, maybe. We don't know. I have a second question, and then I'm going to give the mic away. So, about your friend, who the exhibition is about, right? How would you describe her? Or your acquaintance? Because I never got to meet her.
She was very sensitive. Afro-German in a very actually racialized society. It's very harrowing words she sometimes spoke about her and wrote about her, and her poems too. I found her a very generous, loving, caring person. I mean, there's much more to tell, but I'm still actually processing her passing, which was almost 30 years ago, because it was a very, very sad moment. She was much too young. And like Anya and Amadou said earlier, I've read the book in German, not in English.
Showing our colors.
Yeah, showing our colors, yeah. And this is something else again. This is something also because there have been actually black people here on the continent and in Germany literally for centuries. But then the Germans say, sometimes the Germans, this was years ago, when I first came, they say, no, but we've never seen black people before. There's a lot of rubbish. In fact, there's some old photographs. The circus people, there's a black person there. And there's so much about this. So these are the kind of things I think that, my Ayim was really. This evening.
In the space, is it? How do you feel your presence on a day-to-day basis? And then the other question to Mohammed, you've said you're trying to reclaim the colonial, like taking pictures and photography and shooting. And do you want to share any of your personal process? It would be great. Yeah, thank you.
First time about the Caribbean islands, and he said he was thinking that if God created the islands, according to Camo, that he used to play skidding stones on the water. So that he said if God created the islands, he must skid a stone on the water because the islands are taking the shape. And then he said, then if God skidded a stone, what kind of music was he listening to? And then from that respect, he started realizing that it was the calypso, it wasn't the pentatonic, which was normally the way you write poetry. So for him, it was a call that, looking at the immediate environment and kind of like, he called the process restoring one's broken imagination. So I had to go back to, I had to ask what photography is really about, and it's about light, and there is nothing more divine than light. And I had to go back to my own growing up. So I grew up in a Sufi Muslim kind of like society and an environment. So I went back to the book, which was my foundation, and I traced light within that context. And it kind of like gave me clarity as well of how actually, yeah, it's a process of understanding oneself in this cosmology of light, yeah.
It's beautiful what Mohammed has been saying. And folio review we did for 11 years altogether. If any of you are interested, there's a publication about this whole process, and also with works of the participants. It's called The Journey, and you can buy it in some of the art bookshops here in Berlin. And it was a beautiful time. It was about a week, once a year, in many different parts of the continent. And it was really well funded, and we had a very, very good time. And one thing I would want to stress, and I always stressed it then, we, the mentors, learned from the participants just as much as they learned from us too. It was a beautiful moment when we invited 3 from Sudan. There had already been 1 before, but we invited 3 now to come into the portfolio review as well. And afterwards, after the week, and I go out, and is that a good enough answer, or?
Answers of you both, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you really are interested in photography, there have been some very, very good photographers all over the world. Before, it used to be very much European, American, but now they realizing photographers from all over all continents, literally from the very word go. By the way, the first photo book was not by a man, it was by a woman. Yeah, you see. So there are some really powerful works out there, and you actually they're like poems as well.
Yeah, I have. Can you hear me? I have a question. Yeah. Okay. So, thank you for all those words and all the experience. And we've been hearing a lot about what photography is. And I think my question is, to both of you that have been doing photography for so long, what is photography not? You know, what are the limits of photography in this time that you've been doing photography?
It's an interesting question. There are no limits. You can do anything you really want to do with it. If you go to Hamburg and to the Triennale, and the main exhibition is called Currency, there's work by a South African photographer, Jo Radcliffe, and she
all internal. The outside is an extension of the inside. So how you perceive it is entirely dependent on you. And photographs could be windows, could be mirrors.
Can only try to describe what it means. I was asking myself, the two of you, do you see
in photographs is that if you hold an hour as a unit, down to minutes, break it down to seconds, break it down to milliseconds, and at some point you will reach that point.
If you look at that same photograph for, let's say, 2-3 years, an embedded camera underwater, so he thought it was something 18 because, like Mohammed was saying, you can constantly break down the unit, or what do you call it, your kiefer, your jaw, and all your teeth. But if you look carefully at all these images over time, you begin to read actually what the teeth have done, what they mean, whether it's a woman's teeth or man's, things like that. So it's literally endless. And then it's very individual. So I remember reading once about hunter-gatherers in Namibia. And apparently, the hunters especially, and they go out together in a group to hunt. But some are very gifted in reading footprints. Not all. And this is what it is too with us as well. So even with photography and photographs as well, especially looking at photographs, is fascinating because it's endless, literally.
I think I want to touch on a word, one word you just said now, because I'm really having trouble with it as well.
It's very subjective. So even authenticity still can be seen in so many different ways. When it comes to subjective appraisals, looking at photographs, making a photograph, there you begin to see, you can see the differences. It's very interesting at times, sometimes, especially at big happenings, concerts or whatever it is. You have many photographers, many of them more or less making the same image at the same time, but each is a bit different. Fascinating. So again, no two things are the same. So this is some kind of deeper knowledge which goes down. So now again, also with photographs as well, no two photographs are the same. Fascinating. Even the same negative printed twice, subtle differences, sometimes so fine, it takes sometimes years to begin to see these differences.
Hello there. I was wondering, have you ever been in a situation, because I'm just thinking about an article I read about the person who took the infamous picture and then was interviewed later what he did after taking that picture, and then I read that that person actually took their life after that interview. So my question is, have you ever taken a picture and then afterwards because I always wonder about the question of responsibility and consent as well.
Working in a township, and there was a young man living on the garbage dump, and I just couldn't take it. And it's an ongoing, literally again, everyday process. Again, it gets to the stage where I will get to know him, and then also try to find ways of but again, how far do I go? What do I, this is to see children on the street. This was the case years ago in Egypt, and it was terrible. I'm going into I had a sort of low budget hotel, but the kids were on the street sleeping at night. Terrible. So things like that. And then again, the next question is, okay, why didn't I bring up the kids into my room? So these are the kind of things there. But so these are and this sometimes happens as well. Organize and do. Maybe I can tell you another particular story. In Lagos many years ago, around a very expensive hotel, Eco Hotel, there was a lady totally spaced out. Horrible. But I did make 2-3 images of her over periods of weeks. Eventually, because I don't live at that time I was living in Berlin, but when I go home, I'll still be seeing her around. I didn't see her anymore. I learned that she had passed on. What I didn't, the children had been set up for
you've taken away back then, and yeah, I've noticed that her books and the titles are very
climbing.
They say we come from activists because you're colonizing that image of Africa in your photography work, both of you. And the second question is about the protest camp told us that we had no right. I hope you are the right person to answer this. do you feel the sense of ownership whenever you take a...
Yeah, it's really tough because I feel like also decolonialism is born of, you know, the academic European institutions, so you kind of like work with the same epistemology and so on. But the question of authorship and agency, to the question of responsibility and agency, because, you know, like in the nitty-gritty of the self, you know, like what do I call my ideas? Are they my ideas? Did I generate them? So I'm really like having a struggle because we're now today talking about my Ayim because, you know, we came like, if we came 27 years ago, we would have met her and, you know, she was there. So eventually all of us sitting here, we're going to be a story. And I'm really fascinated in like this passage of time, you know, and like, because you really never own anything, you know. Eventually it's going to end up there as information anyways. So I don't necessarily see the work as my work, but I see that I could be a medium in which I, you know, brought up this work. Or at least I actually see like the purpose of the work of the creative, you know, being my or being Akinbode or being, you know, yourself, is actually to open up a conversation, for us to have these conversations and kind of like, you know, continue from where the others have stopped. You know, and I feel like, yeah, also the whole question of blackness and Africa is really, yeah, Bode, I leave that to you.
What about this thing of ownership of the image? Like he was
I
asking.
don't own my work.
No, I mean, in his case, you know, where they wanted to use images, but the photographer said, no, you know, because, I mean, in that particular case, I don't know the whole peculiarities, but I think especially that, because I also was sometimes going to Orania Plus in that time and making photographs. If you had asked me, no problem whatsoever, you can use my images. But I do know some photographers are very sort of, you know, funny or weird about these kind of things. To return to your first point about decolonizing the gaze on Africa, especially, and, you know, the way Africa has been represented in the media, I would say for about 100, 150 years, it's really crazy. So we and others as well, I mean, many of us on the continent, but me, I'm in the diaspora and so on, we are very much against this. And there are so many visual images to be told about Africa. This definitely for sure. And then this you know, Pacific way of seeing Africa as starving, or war, and disease as well, it's just mind-blowing. It is fortunately changing, but still changing at a very, very slow pace. There's a book, I would really recommend it to you, written by Mark Seeley. It's about decolonizing the gaze. And it's very, very important because even on the continent, you find photographers, these are African photographers, who, like just Mohammed was just saying just now, still exoticize Africa, you know, exoticize, you know, their own people sometimes. So rather than photograph every day, they want to go to the countryside and photograph some people who still live in a particular kind of way or this kind of thing, which I find sometimes very upsetting, even going so fast. Pardon me? Sorry, yeah. So that's about it, really. Unfortunately, sometimes now, you know, we have. I was talking to Ativa just now about the war in Ethiopia. I mean, other places, even in Nigeria, some horrible things are happening, and I'm not saying that these things should not also be photographed and shown as well. But there's so many other narratives too. It's not just this particular one. So many other narratives. One thing is sometimes so fascinating. And very important.
All right, thank you so much. Colors that was mentioned in the talk as well. With my Ayim has a fundraiser going on right now. We have a live stream, and the link will be posted in the live stream. it would be great to support. We will also be putting the link up on the Oyoun Instagram, and just to make sure to share it, please have a look, please share it widely, and please let's support each other. That's all for today. Thank you so